Good morning. Welcome to Sunday morning. Or whatever day it is, wherever you are, on whatever side of the timeline. Today we're going to talk about the stories we tell. I've been attending a series of Dharma talks online with Gil Fonsdale at the Insight Meditation Teacher, and he's been talking about stories we construct and how we let them define us. And I thought that was really good and insightful, so I thought I would talk about that this morning. And to let you know that my friend Matthew Sozin is going to be doing this group the next 2 weeks while I'm on the road. Matthew is a really great teacher with a lot of... Hi, Milla! I love a good entrance. Yeah, Matthew is a really great teacher with a lot of experience, and he did the same teacher training that I did with Jack Kornfield and Tara Brock, and he has graciously made himself available to fill in for me for the next 2 weeks. Don't miss him, he's really good. So, I'd like to start by telling a story that I heard, and then we're going to meditate, and then we're going to talk about stories. When the Dalai Lama first came to America, he was doing a lecture tour, and he was in Los Angeles when a teacher named Sharon Salzberg approached him and asked him why he never talks about self-esteem. And he didn't know what she was talking about. So she explained it to him, and it made him cry because it had never occurred to him that people would feel bad about themselves. That was completely new information. And the takeaway from that for me is all of the self-criticism and difficulty feeling good about ourselves and low self-esteem is a cultural thing. The Dalai Lama lost his country, he lost his home, he lost everything. He had to walk by foot from Tibet to India, set up an entire new life all over again, and nowhere in that process did he feel bad about himself. Because it's just a foreign thing in the culture. It's a really common thing in this culture. I think that's an important story. I think that's a story that can inform us and liberate us. So after the meditation, I'm going to talk more about stories, the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we hear, how they affect us, how they affect our thinking. But first, let's meditate. So I invite you to find a comfortable meditation posture where you can be alert and awake and comfortable at the same time. We enter into a meditation posture for a number of reasons, but one of the ones I like is we are actually entering into something different than our regular waking, walking thing. When we take a meditation posture, we are entering into a process like walking through a door in which we are going to sit and observe our mind and be okay, regardless of how we feel, and practice. So I invite you to find a posture where you're alert and awake, but you can relax. Not slouching, but still like letting your body, your back fall into its natural curve. Tucking your chin just a little bit to straighten the top of your spine and your neck without stretching your neck muscles. And let's start by becoming aware of the touch points. You can notice the sensations of your body in the chair or the cushion. Noticing the sensations of your hands resting on your lap. Just noticing the simplicity of sitting in this moment. There's no story to tell, there's no story attached. We're just sitting in this moment. Now let's take a few slow, deep breaths. Just to help get connected to the body. Noticing the sensations as you inhale, as the chest expands and the back might straighten a little bit. And on the exhale, just start the process of letting your body and mind relax. Letting your breathing return to normal. And as you exhale, just relaxing the muscles in your face and letting your eyes just settle back in their sockets. Receiving an in-breath. And on the out-breath, just continuing to relax and soften to whatever degree you can. It's all good. Relaxing the thinking mind, just letting it go quiet, if you can. It's relaxing into kind of spaciousness as the mind, that part of the mind sort of flattens out like waves, relaxing on the top of the water. Into a more tranquil lake, not worrying about the ripples. Just sitting in the uncomplicated simplicity of this moment. Nothing is happening. No story is unfolding. And now let your attention come to your breathing. Just noticing. Noticing the sensations of your body breathing in. Noticing the sensations of your body breathing out. And just letting your attention rest and focusing on the sensations of the body breathing. Just noticing what it's like to breathe in. Observing what it's like to breathe out. Just the body breathing. Your mind wanders off in thought, storytelling, planning, processing, narrating. That's okay. It does that. And when you notice, just say to yourself, all good. No judgment. Just say all good. And bring your attention back to your breathing. Thoughts may arise. They come. They go. There's nothing new about that. There's nothing we can do about that. We may tell ourselves a story about that, but that's not reality. And the thought itself may have a story attached. It's just a story. But you can nod and bow to it and say, all good. And come back to your breathing. And as we come to the end of this meditation, I invite you to notice there's no story unfolding in this moment, there's just the moment. The mind may drift off into the future and the past. It does that. It's still you sitting in the simplicity of this moment, independent of the phenomenon of discursive thought and storytelling. We're just here, now, breathing in and out. And may it be that this meditation helps us to settle and open to remove, to blow away the dust from our eyes and hearts. So we can meet the world with kindness and compassion. And may it be that this meditation helps us be more centered, to make it easier to bring that energy into the world, to the people around us in our households, to the people we meet just in passing. And radiating into our homes and streets and villages and towns and cities. May the benefits of this practice be of benefit to all beings everywhere. May all beings be happy. May all beings be well. May all beings be safe. May all beings be at ease and at peace. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for joining us this morning. As usual, I put the usual information in the chat. How to find these sessions, how to find me, my website, my contact information. If you feel moved to make a donation, which I do not expect or need, but if you feel moved to do so, there's a link for that. So I was on meditation retreat at a place called Cloud Mountain. I love these retreat centers because they're always out in the middle of nowhere, out in the woods. It's beautiful and it's lush. And Cloud Mountain is 90 miles north of Portland. You have to fly to Portland and then get a ride. And it was probably the third or fourth day, and I'm sitting out on this deck, this open wooden deck, and I'm just meditating. It's very peaceful. It's right after the rain, and there's nothing like the rain in the forest, right? It's just lush and beautiful. And in my head I hear, "You're screwing this up. You're doing this wrong." And it stunned me, because what I realized in that moment, well, for one thing, what could I possibly be doing wrong? I'm literally sitting here just to sit here and for no other reason. Right? So it was like seeing Mara, the god of illusion, naked in front of me, saying, "See, this is what you do." And I realized that was a story that I've been telling myself for a very long time. I'm the guy who screws things up. It was a liberating moment for me. We tell stories. We have stories. Cultures have stories. Cultures pass on the culture by telling stories. Religions, stories are central to the way religious and spiritual ideas are passed on. Especially, one of the things I appreciate about the Hindu tradition, Hindu is billed by a lot of people as a polytheistic, because there's all these gods and deities. But there's another school of thought that says it's not really, because there's only one deity that cannot be described or expressed, so they describe it in aspects and stories. Stories inform us, educate us, explain the world around us. And there are stories we tell ourselves. The story I've been telling myself is I'm the guy who screws everything up. Which isn't true, by the way. And that's fine. The only problem is when we grasp onto these stories and let them define us, tell us who we are. And there are various types of stories. There's what I have heard referred to as source stories, origin stories, stories that influence how we see ourselves in the world. I've said for a long time, be careful what you say to your kids, it becomes their inner voice later. My father was always disappointed in me. I could never do anything right in front of him. And flash forward however many years later, I'm meditating and I hear that. Except I hear it in my voice instead of his. But that's a story from my past that became a source of how I viewed myself up to that time, and I still struggle with that a little bit, because we don't like I have a magic wand. We don't like just wave it and make this stuff go away. But I keep it around just in case. Growing up in addicted homes, especially violent addicted homes, that breeds codependence, because the story becomes I have to take care of everybody and keep everybody sane, otherwise something bad's going to happen. Right? So we end up giving up on our own needs to take care of everybody else, and that's the birth of codependence. That pattern usually starts before you're 4 years old. But it's a story we learn to tell ourselves about our reality, that we have to keep taking care of other people or we won't be loved. And there are trapping stories, like the one I just told you about. I can't do anything right, I'm trapped in that. I was working for the newspaper, San Francisco Chronicle. Very coveted job in Silicon Valley. The only problem was I was really starting to hate it. And nobody could relate to that because all the other reporters wanted that job. And I was telling myself, I'm trapped here because I don't have another set of skills. I can't do anything else. That's a trapping story. And I stayed in that job a year longer than I should have, because I just didn't think I could do anything else. And what ended up happening was, after my father died, I got involved with a volunteer grief counseling agency, first as a client and then later as a counselor. And the profound experience there was that those same communication skills that made me a good journalist also made me a good counselor. The interviewing skills, the listening skills, the drawing people out skills. And that was a different kind of story. What I've heard referred to as releasing stories or opening stories. That story opened me to all kinds of possibilities. Because I really had been living in my father's world of you land into your occupation and you stay in it until you die, right? That's what he grew up with. And he did that. He was a very successful businessman, but he was really unhappy. So our stories shift, and they can shift. And it's important to be aware of these stories and recognize that they don't define us. I grew up in a really chaotic, violent, and addicted home. And the story I took away from that was that the world is not safe and I'm somehow damaged. That was a story I told myself for years. And I don't tell myself that story anymore. Years of therapy, meditation, 12-step groups, I constructed a different story. I started letting people get close to me, which brings us to stories of affirmation. Once I started to deconstruct the old story and construct, oh, the world is a safe place and people who approach me are not going to hurt me. I'm a capable person. I am not a disappointment. I am an award-winning journalist on the way to becoming, hopefully, a good therapist. And if I was a good therapist or not, that's not for me to judge. But people kept coming back and their lives seemed to be getting better, so what more could I ask for? But, I went into taking in California is the most stringent state for getting licensed as a therapist. And you have to do 3 or 4 years of grad school, 1,500 hours of internship, pass the first exam so that you can take the second exam. And I have this image of myself as somebody, it's a story I tell, it's somebody who can't retain information. Now, people who know me know that that's really not so true. So I went in to take the therapist exam. I didn't study for it because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it would be. So I figured I'll take the exam, I'll know what it is. And then I will come back. I'll fail it, which I expected to do. Then I'll know what it is, and I'll come back and I'll study for that. Well, that plan didn't work because I passed. That's an affirming story. That's a yes story. I'm a capable person. And then I missed the second exam by 1 point. And 1 point. So I went off and took a course on how to take exams. Went back and did it again, and then spent 25 years as a therapist. So we can change our story anytime. In my early career as a therapist, I worked in the nonviolent sex offender program in San Jose, California, child molesters, which was very hard for me at first because I went in there feeling like I needed to just throw a chair at some of these people. But that was my story about how angry I was and I could not look past it. I was telling myself a story about how I couldn't look past it. But I learned to, and they brought me to a place of compassion that I never expected. But I would listen to these people's stories, their source stories, and I remember this epiphany moment of thinking, well, of course you did that. Thank God you didn't shoot up a post office. Right? We have these stories that influence our lives. And in meditation, we learn not to live in these stories. We learn to relate to that part of the mind as a part of the mind, as not as who we are, because that part of my mind is still alive and well and active and telling stories. Right? Okay, fine. Some of them are interesting. Most of them are not. I really think if you take some time during the day to really listen to what I refer to as the radio station of the mind and the stories it's telling you and the places it goes, it's not even interesting. It has no new information. But it tells stories. And so one of the things we learn in meditation is a different way of relating to those stories. The story that I'm not a capable person, my father was disappointed in his life, and he didn't own that, so he delivered it to me, and I picked that up and carried it around. And I learned really a lot. My meditation practice had a lot to do with it, to recognize that as a story I was carrying around that didn't belong to me. So we learn to relate to the storytelling mind from the point of view that our thoughts are real, but they're not true. The stories are, they're real, and I hear them, and I know of them, but they are not true. They are not truths. They're just stories. Rapunzel is a great story. It's one of my favorite stories from those times when I was hearing those stories. But I really doubt that there was like a 22-year-old woman who grew her hair long enough that she could throw it out the tower and have Prince Charming climb up. Right? That's how I'm trying to learn to relate to the stories. And they're crucial to the culture and society, but they define the culture and society. And if you watch and read the news, which is a endeavor of questionable value, one of the things you'll notice is people are always trying to tell you what the story is. There's the news story, then there are the people who are trying to tell you what the story is about. It's about this, it's not about that, we are this, we are that. But these are just stories. My father used to like to tell stories. My father was a great storyteller. He was very gregarious. Liked to laugh a lot. My father used to tell stories about how he liked to make people laugh and how entertaining he could be. That became a part of me. I've incorporated that. I like that. The thing about these stories that we grew up with is one of the things you hear in Al-Anon is take what you like, leave the rest. But as I said, he used to frequently express disappointment and disapproval, and that became part of my story. But it didn't have to be, and it doesn't have to be for you. We tell stories all the time. Someone says, "How are you?" And you tell them the story of what happened to you that day. How was today? Well, I had a really strange conversation with my boss, and that customer was really a pain in the ass. We tell stories. Being a therapist for 25 years, I heard all kinds of stories. And people usually came into therapy because the stories weren't working for them anymore. And some people have source stories that are hugely traumatic, that conditioned how they saw the world and themselves. And one of the things that we worked on was just changing the story. Some people have a story where they grew up in a difficult environment and they look out at the world and see a dangerous place. There's a story at the core of that. Some people look out at the world and see something hopeful. And they feel summoned by optimism. There's a story behind that. My oldest friend is a woman named Eileen. She lives in upstate New York. I have known her since 9th grade. We were 14. I just turned 67. That's a long time. In any given room, she's the smartest person in the room. That's just the way it is. And she was brought up having that affirmed. So she hasn't really grappled that much with the I'm inadequate thing. And she delivers hope and optimism, and I see it. So I challenge you. What is your source story? What attitude or view do you carry with you that informs how you view yourself in the world? And what if you can change your story anytime? We're sitting in meditation, sometimes we notice, sometimes we don't notice that we're like off in thought when we're walking around the world. But we sit in meditation and we observe that, non-judgmentally. And I'm learning to, when that happens, my mind goes off to the movers are coming on Wednesday. My mind goes off, so I hope that jazz shoot tonight is good. My mind goes off, so I shouldn't have said that. In meditation, we get to observe that and say, okay, I'm going to accept that as something that informs me, or doesn't. I'm going to toss that one aside and kind of look at it, and I'm going to, oh, I like that. There are quest stories where we acknowledge that life on the whole is unpredictable. That's a central tenet in Buddhism, right? Everything is changing all the time. And instead of taking that as a story of, oh my God, look how dangerous it can be, we can take that in a story that offers opportunities to make the best of the situation, and we can become transformed. That's the story we can tell ourselves. We get to choose this. And a steady meditation practice, a steady mindfulness practice gives us the tools to see when we're doing that. What story did you choose today? Somewhere along the line, I decided to choose optimism. I choose to believe things will work out. Now that is completely separate from I will get what I want. That's a completely separate issue, right? Because I don't know if anybody here saw Evan Almighty, where God, played by Morgan Freeman, who else, makes Jim Carrey God for a week in this city block, right? And he's hearing all these prayers. So he gets tired of it, and he just gives everybody everything they want, everything they say they want. And it's complete and total pandemonium, right? Sometimes not getting what you want is a blessing. But I choose to tell myself a story that everything is going to be okay, I'm going to be okay. I'm still on the right side of the dirt. As long as I'm still breathing in and breathing out, there's more right than there is wrong. Things are going to work out, regardless of whether I can predict what that's going to look like. So there's a challenge here. What's your story? What story are you telling yourself today? Are you telling yourself a story that's making it easier to navigate, or are you telling a story that's making it harder to navigate? And what if you can change that story anytime? Because there's what happens to us, there's what happens to us and around us, and then there's how we narrate it. Those are two different things. And through a steady mindfulness practice, we get a view onto that split. It's a beautiful thing, at least to me. Sherry Hoover, one of my favorite writers, she's a Zen teacher up at the Sonoma foothills in California. In her book, The Key and the Name of the Key is Willingness, she writes, the ways you think you are, not the ways you really are the bars of your personal prison. Just because you think something is so, that you're bad, selfish, ugly, perfect, brilliant, inadequate, doesn't mean it's so, it just means you think it's so. The stories we tell ourselves are not necessarily true. We can choose to believe that we're okay, even when it's difficult. We can choose to believe that horrible story of what we grew up with doesn't have to define who we are today. Every now and then I hear somebody say, well, I was raised that way. I said, well, reject that. You can reject the parts of your upbringing that don't work for you. My father loved to tell stories. I love to tell stories. He loved to tell jokes. I love to tell jokes. He was an unreliable alcoholic. I've had to like put that part of the story aside. He loved Frank Sinatra. I love Frank Sinatra. A voice like that isn't created, it's born. And will not come again. So we get to choose our stories, how they inform us about ourselves, and choose whether they become lenses through which we look at the world. So I'm challenging you to find a story that enhances your life and helps you feel happy, healthy, and well. Focus on that part of your story. The part of you that's still vertical and above ground after everything has happened. The part of you that knows how sweet and cool and good you are. The part of you that can see you through the eyes of the people who love you. Nurture that story. So, thank you for your kind attention. Does anybody have any comments, questions? Mila. Hi, Mila.
Ken, everyone, good morning. Good morning. I heard you say the movers are coming, and I've missed several weeks. What's the story? Where are you going?
Florida. You know, I moved here from California for, a lot of good reasons, most of which didn't pan out. I didn't anticipate how much I would miss living near the ocean and hate the winter. So, I'm moving to Clearwater. All good. Thanks for asking. I will still be doing these, it's just I'm going to be on the road, so my friend Matthew is going to show up the next 2 Sundays. Matthew's really good, you should check him out. Smarter than me. Anything else? Anybody else? Okay, guys, I take you with me in my heart. I'll miss seeing you. Stanley, you're waving. And
I just want to wish you a good journey, safe journey.
Thank you.
And hopefully not too many inconveniences. I know it's hard, so whenever you move, it can be.
Well, I've talked about Bardo spaces, right? This is it. There's no bigger Bardo than this one. Well, there are, but this is a Bardo, and I live in one right now. So thank you, Stanley. See you guys in a couple.
Thanks, Ken. Have a good trip.
Thanks.